bandsaw today. So I got a nice quick drawing of a ugly looking spoon. Okay, not the greatest looking spoon. It's a very interesting spoon. It'll work for the demo. Okay, so who has used a bandsaw before? Hopefully most, if not all of you. Okay, so you should be somewhat familiar with the safety with this tool. Okay, so safety gear. What do I need before I use this machine?
Glasses.
Safety glasses. Push sticks are important. Okay, so depending, I'm going to use a scrap piece of wood. Yeah, okay. What else? You don't need an apron. I just like having this on me because I have extra tools on me. If you have long sleeves, whenever you're using a power tool, roll up your sleeves, okay? You don't want anything getting close to machines and loose parts. Make sure you got closed-toed shoes on, okay? And nice elastic. Now, before you use any power tool, what should you always do first? Ask who? Me. Okay? So, either myself or Mr. Hoffman, if you have him as a shop teacher.
Or me.
You need to make sure, ask you?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
But then me too.
No.
Because one, I need to know where everybody is, and I need to make sure that one, you've been here for the demo, and everybody's here, which is good. And then two, I need to make sure that you're safe and comfortable using the machine, and also that you've passed the safety test. Okay? And what do we need on a safety test to pass?
80%.
At least 80%.
I'm
Okay.
good with safety tests.
She's good with safety.
I'm not good
I
with
want you to just back up a little bit. Okay? Now, we're gonna cut out our weird looking spoon. Okay?
It looks like a mushroom.
Now, before you cut anything on the bandsaw, like I've done here, you need to draw out or your whatever you're cutting, in this case a spoon.
Like a lot of perfect measurements.
A lot of perfect measurements. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be custom. Okay. Now, with this machine, okay, once you've got it marked out, a couple things you need to be mindful of. No one should be standing where?
On that to the right.
On this side, to the right. Okay? Because if something happens to the blade and it breaks, there's a slim chance that it could come shooting out this way. Okay? I've never seen it happen. Mr. Hoffman's never seen it happen. But we've talked to some people who've seen it like once in their life. So it can happen. So if you're walking by like this, not a big deal. But you shouldn't be standing here waiting for the machine right here. Okay? This is a bad place to be. Okay? If you're waiting for the machine, you should be behind, and you should never ever talk to a person using the machine because you don't want to distract them and have them push into this, looking away, because that's how we can lose a finger. Okay? So make sure you have your eye on what you're doing at all times. Okay? Now, when using the machine, this piece at the back, I need to make sure I'm holding this so that we can adjust the blade guard. And there's a little lever in the back, we can loosen it, and I can adjust this. Okay? If I don't hold on to this and just loosen this, this can come crashing down and slam onto the table. Okay? So make sure you got a secure hold on that. These two other bandsaws have something similar, but they're a little bit different. Now, just looking at this, what's wrong with this?
That's way too high.
Way too high. Why?
You can cut your. You can
You
put
could
your
like
hand on
you
it.
could lose a limb on this. Okay? Less than pinky width. Okay? So when I'm adjusting this, put your piece of wood underneath. Bring this down. Okay? And it should be low enough to where you can still freely move your piece of wood underneath, but it should be low enough to where if I take my smallest finger, which for most people is their pinkies, okay? If I can't fit my pinky finger under there, that's what I want. Okay? Because if I am to slip, it's going to hit the guard, and I'm hopefully not going to get cut, whereas if I was to slip and if it was higher up, it's just going to keep going. Okay? Because, does everybody know what a butcher is? Butchers use bandsaws to cut meat and bones. Yes. And it goes very fast. So it's so like this wood is much stronger than my skin. So you've seen how fast you can cut wood on a bandsaw? That's how fast your hand will go. Very fast. Yeah. So you need to be careful. Okay?
Do we have any bulletproof finger holders?
Bulletproof finger holders. I think you need more than bulletproof against one of these things. Now, when you're adjusting the guard, students tend to forget this. Make sure you're holding the back. Sometimes I've seen students go like this and grab it like this, and it moves this guard forward, and then it scares students sometimes where you'll hear a metal on metal grinding sound because this is a little closer. So just make sure this is pulled back. because if you hear that or see sparks, make sure you let me know so I can check it out. Now, when you're making your cut, okay, a couple things we need to be careful of. If we're doing anything that's curved, there's a special cut we need to do first. Relief cuts. Okay, so if I am doing cuts like this, like along the top here, I'm going to cut little lines kind of around my profile, like this, okay? And then what I can do is I can cut sharper curves, okay? If I don't do relief cuts and try to do a sharp curve, it could put a lot of tension on the blade, and if you put a lot of tension on the blade, you're going to hear a loud squealy, screechy sound, okay? So if you hear that, you need to relieve the pressure. But if you put too much pressure, it could potentially snap the blade or pull the blade off of the machine, okay? That little bandsaw here that Abby's standing beside, sometimes the blade will pop off every now and then if students twist too much on it, so just be careful, okay? So now with your relief cuts should only go about an inch deep into your project, or about like twice the width of the blade, because if I was to do a relief cut, let's just draw an example on the back here. So let's say I have this random curve like this, and I want to do relief cuts inside here to cut that curve out, okay? Those would be too deep, okay? Because if I try to push in too far in a cut and then pull back, if I don't pull back exactly the way I went in, I could like pull back on an angle, which is then going to pull the blade off the machine, okay? So your relief cuts, if I was to do one like this, I would do it in stages where I would do like a little bit at a time, do relief cuts, cut it back and forth, cut it out, do the same thing, another stage until I get to the bottom, okay? So on this spoon, I'm actually going to cut off some of the waste first, just to kind of get it closer to the profile before I actually cut it off, okay? And then back to having this a pinky width above with the guard. There's a few other measurements that are important. So when it comes to the safety test, one is less than the pinky width, and there's a couple more. Does anybody know what the other ones are? Less than the width of a pencil. So a pencil is pretty much the same or smaller than your pinky. So if a pencil can't fit under that, that's also good. What else? 3 millimeters. So 3 millimeters, you don't have to measure 3 millimeters each time, so that's why we use our fingers as measurement, okay? And those are things that you want to remember, okay? Now, with the blade itself, how close can I get my hands to the blade? Does anybody remember? 2 inches. So if you get closer than 2 inches, that's too close, okay?
Plate is close.
So-
It's not 2 inches.
So this silver plate here
It's 1 inch.
isn't 2 inches, it's maybe like an inch and a quarter, inch and a half.
It's like an inch.
So it's an inch and a half, almost inch and a half, okay? But as a good guide, if your hand is outside of this silver plate, then you're about 2 inches, okay? So if you're getting any closer than that, then you're not doing what you're supposed to do, okay? Now, if you're doing a cut that requires you to get closer to the blade, you shouldn't just use your fingers. You should have some piece of scrap or a push stick of some kind to allow you to get closer to it so that you don't get your fingers close to the blade, okay? Because sometimes if I'm getting like right at the edge of the corner, I want to be able to like support it and kind of push it through with another piece of wood, like that, okay? And then with the power tools, like I said before we can turn any power tool on, the new system that we have, the dust collection system has to be turned on. If it's not turned on, then we can't use it, okay? Now, if we ever want to cut round things, you should never ever just cut like a round dowel on the bandsaw as is. You should use this thing here, okay? This is a dowel jig, okay? So this dowel jig slides in this groove here. So then I can put a dowel on this and hold it securely in place, because when the bandsaw spins around in the machine like this, if it touches the blade, it could spin out of control and it could pull your hand into the machine. And is that safe? No. You can lose your finger, not too bad. Okay. So you need to make sure you're cutting anything around. It's with the dowel jig or use a handsaw. Okay. And you should never ever use the miter saw for round stuff.
It's actually a jig dowel. Dowel jig.
Well, it's upside down. There, hop it down.
Dang it.
Dowel jig, jig dowel. Fine. So usually this is here. So it's either in my office or on the bandsaw somewhere. Okay. Anything else? I think we're pretty good. Okay. Now, can someone go turn the power on for me? So big green button on the big gray box. That's a light. There we go. Alright, so like I said, I'm going to cut off some of the extra and excess on this, and then I'm going to do relief cuts to cut this out. Okay? So, now, when we're using this, whenever you're turning it on and off buttons over here, but there's 3 steps you need to remember when turning it off. Okay? So, if it's on, step 1, turn it off. Step 2, put your foot on the brake. Okay? Sometimes it helps if you hold the table here to kind of get the support. And then 3rd step is you need to lower the guard so it's flat on the table, unless someone else is using it for the exact same thing and the adjustments don't need to be fixed. It is a lot louder. So I'm just going to raise my bicycle. Okay? So, Abby, what's step 1 when turning this off? Press off. Step 2. What's step 2?
Brake.
Hit the brake. Step 3.
Wait till it stops.
That's kind of part of the brake step. Step 3. Lower the guard. Okay? 3 steps. Make sure you remember those. Alright, so I'm just going to cut off some of the excess, and then I'll show you how to cut out your screw. Okay? Cut off some of the corners. There. Now, I just did some random cuts just to kind of get rid of some of the excess. Okay? Now, a couple things. If there's ever wood near the blade, should I just try to reach at it and move it? No. Okay, 1, only do that when it's turned off. 2, don't just use your hands, either with the piece of wood you're using or a piece of scrap or a hand broom. Push it out of the way so it's not near the blade. Then you can put it in the scrap. Now, we're going to use some relief cuts to cut this out, or at least part of it. Okay, we're going to do half. Okay. So with your relief cuts, you want it so it's almost touching your spoon, okay? It's not quite. Now, there is no set distance for relief cuts. It's just that when you're doing a tighter curve, do more cuts. Okay? Fine. So girls, now we've got our relief cuts. I'm going to take this and slowly cut through the curve and cut this up, okay?
So satisfying.
So satisfying. So these relief cuts, these little pieces are going to pop off, okay? As they pop off, it's going to relieve tension on the blade, okay? Now, if you have little bits that you need to clean up a bit, you can use the edge of the bandsaw blade and just touch it up a little bit. Or you can use the power sand. But you want to try to have a nice, relatively clean cut that is close to your curve. Okay? And then afterwards we can use the power settings, which I'll show you in a second how to do that. Is there any questions about this?
Your fingers move now.
Not yet. Okay, now, there is one other cut we'll have to do on the bandsaw. We'll also have to do a sideways cut to kind of get the back profile. That one's a little bit tricky, and I'll have to do that for you, okay? Because it's not as safe, so I'm going to do that for you, okay? Any questions about this? Good.